Welcome into UGA Football Live with JC Shelton, where the dogs come to talk. Hey guys, welcome in UGA Football Live. We're going live. I know, guys, this is instant premiere on YouTube because of basically a test run. But we will be live, myself and none other than Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end. We're going to be live each Thursday throughout the season for you guys. We're going to do really college football talk in general, obviously focusing on Georgia football and the SEC, but also our thoughts on the games. We're going to preview the games here, do more of that than we do in our regular shows each week. We'll still have our regular shows with former Georgia Bulldogs Monday, Tuesday each week, but Thursdays are going to be our live show. So you can find us on our Twitter, Facebook. We're going to be throwing it there. The links, quick tap, you'll be straight into YouTube, and we'll have our first really live season show. And I can't thank Arthur enough for doing this. I mean, I think from what you guys have told me that you really appreciate his insight, and I'm really excited. We're going to have a lot of fun on this. Arthur, I appreciate you, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. First and foremost, thank you for agreeing to do this. Like I said, this is something that every time that I've come on with you, and really anytime I've been able to do any sort of media stuff since my playing days have long been over, it gives me a really cool opportunity to stay connected to the program, right? I'm a massive college football fan, with or without my own playing experience, right? I get nostalgia this time of year when, in Massachusetts it gets a little bit colder, a little bit quicker. But when that fall weather comes around, things in my, I just get a little tingling feeling all around, like emotionally, mentally, psychologically. And so to be able to talk about, a school that has given me so much with one of my friends in UJC, man, I'm just very excited to have this relationship move forward. Love the fact that we'll be live, even if we're not super live right now.
Yeah.
But we're more moving forward, and I think you and I are going to build this up to be something pretty cool as the season goes on. But I think first and foremost, I'm just ready for. I like to call it week one. Technically, it's week two. I know people call last week week zero, but
Yes,
the first full slate college football this weekend, I'm fired up.
Yeah, I really, all my betting friends love week zero. Like that's a big time for them as well. I feel like your regular college football fan, week one that's college
Yeah, that's
football,
called
right?
slight degeneracy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? A little bit of degenerate gambling, but
yeah.
I
I
mean,
can't say I do not partake.
as long as they're not, staying up at 2 a.m. betting on cricket games in Australia and India, I think they're okay. But you never know.
Yeah, well,
After
2
hours
a.m.
betting, you never know.
Pac-12. I mean, Pac-12 is kind of that's where you get. It's like your SEC, ACC, all the big stuff, all the big games each week, and then you're a little low. You're a little low, and then that Pac-12 game comes on that you didn't even look at all week, and you're like, okay, I kind of like that. You're just talking yourself into it,
Yeah.
Love
No, I
it.
totally understand. Totally understand. Luckily, the gambling twitch isn't really too much of mine, but I am going to pick them. So I think we'll probably hit on some of those things at the end of these
Yeah,
shows.
man.
But yeah, I'm excited to dive in, JC.
Awesome. Well, right now we also have Florida playing Utah. I don't have it on in here, but after we're done, I'm definitely going to be watching that. It's exciting to have you on and do this live thing. And I think, guys, make sure to subscribe to the Pulse Sports Network on YouTube. It's where you can find the show on a weekly basis. Also, UJ Football Live on Twitter and Facebook. That's where these links are going to be sent out every week. Quick tap and you're good to go. You'll jump right in with us, and we'll keep an eye on the comments as well. If you want to throw some questions to us, your takes, we'll talk it through. So just keep that in mind. What I want to do is we'll start it off talking about UT Martin. FCS opponent, definitely. Now Georgia obviously is going to win this game. The talent discrepancy there is pretty large, but I do want to give you a couple of players to watch. Something so you can be in tune with the game when Georgia kicks off. 6 p.m. kick in Athens. Weather should be good from what I'm looking at, but it is Georgia weather, so it could just, could sleet. You never know. So UT Martin, Ohio Valley Conference, 7-4 last year. They were 5-0 in conference. It's actually defensive line coach for Georgia right now. Trey Scott's his former team. He coached for them for a while. They did lose their top wide receiver, top running back, top QB from a year ago, and they lost their top 2 tacklers. So they have some work to do in replacing that production. And against Georgia, that is going to be very difficult. We know that. Players to watch: Sam Franklin, sophomore running back. He's the guy. Lost their starting to a transfer to Arkansas State, I believe. He's a second returning leading rusher. Dalen Dotson, junior defensive end, led the team in sacks. He's back last year, led him in tackles for loss. And then Devontae Tanksley, what a name that is. I love that, actually, Tanksley, junior wide receiver, and he's the leading returning pass catcher. Quick update on UT Martin there, just something to know and keep mind of. So let's open it with, we'll get into season prediction, CFP, and UT Martin score prediction a little bit later. Let's do this. Let's do offense here for Georgia. Obviously, Arthur and I have talked about this on here before, but there are plenty of questions. You got some changes, and it's something that you should be cognizant of, and I'm sure you are if you watch this show and you keep up with your Bulldogs. But Mike Bobo comes in an offensive coordinator after Todd Monken had 2 national championships and really built this offense into something special, I think, from a schematic standpoint and from a recruiting standpoint. Obviously, Carson Beck was named by the starter. And honestly, it really caught me by surprise that Beck was named a starter. Keyword is named by Kirby Smart. Because from my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but Kirby Smart hasn't named a starting quarterback since 2019 when Fromm was still at the helm. So he doesn't do that often, especially when you have guys really competing for that spot. I think that really speaks to how far Beck is away from Brock Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton. So I was surprised by that, even though he was expected to take the reins there. I'm not saying he wasn't going to be, but I think the gap there is a lot larger than we might have thought, and for what Kirby Smart really alluded to this offseason. What do you think Mike Bobo does in this first game against UT Martin? We already talked about an FCS opponent here. Does he show his cards? Are we going to see Carson Beck maybe play a half? What do you expect here from Bobo?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think when I think about Mike Bobo, and I think about what he wants to do, is he wants to be able to have his players feel confident early on, right? So that there's going to be guys who just are confident going into it because of the success that they've had, right? Returning offensive linemen, their jitters are going to be low because they kind of understand when they've had so much time and success individually as a collective unit. I don't imagine the O-line playing poorly, right? When you have a guy like Carson, when you have some other players, like I think Delp, they're going to want to get Delp active early. Obviously, he's not going to start over Bowers, but I think these younger guys that they know will need to play vital roles throughout the season, right? I think they're going to try to get them active early, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. And I think the way that Bobo does that, particularly for the quarterback position, and I know you had Aaron on your show earlier this week, he likes to do these kind of when I was coming up, it was kind of the shallow cross stampede, right? Where one tight end, 3 receiver set out of the gun, one back, and basically every single the Y, the Z, the TED or F, I should say, and X would all run a different shallow, and then there'd be pairings of the routes. Whoever had the shallow, there'd be a void or there'd be a fade on one side, and it was pretty much baked in. Right, you didn't really have to read the coverage. It was a simple read by the quarterback, and it was really just trying to get rhythm going for not only the quarterback but the offense collectively, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you go back to the 2000, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, whenever we were having earlier in the season, we wanted to get the tempo going early, particularly for the quarterback position. At the quarterback position, we'd start off right away with these kind of baked in plays, 4 in a row, no huddle. Now, I don't know if they're going to jump out the gun with that or out the gates with that, but I do think that he's going to want to try to get some confidence in his quarterback early, right? And I think that's going to be super important for Carson. I know they're playing, as my grandfather was a longtime high school football coach, to the Little Sisters of the Poor or the School of the Blind, right? That's UT Martin. I love UT Martin, no disrespect, but we're in a different we're in a whole different atmosphere of football. That doesn't mean that they should take this game lightly, right? And I really think I know how Coach Bobo thinks in terms of his quarterback position and his overall his offenses, or at least I used to. And that's he wants to get confidence in these guys. He wants these guys to be able to play confident early on because each week the stakes get a little bit, you know, a little bit more serious, and a little bit more serious, a little bit more serious. And next thing you know, we're playing at Auburn. Next thing you know, we got Tennessee. So I think for Bobo and for his offense, he's going to want to get these guys to be feeling a little bit more confident in themselves and their ability, both individually and as a collective unit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that they're going to start fast, and Bobo's going to draw some stuff, maybe what Carson likes, what they talk about in practice, and put in through the week. I think this is a perfect opportunity to instill more of that confidence. Now, hearing Carson Beck speak in interviews and writing off of that this offseason, I think he does have confidence. A lot of that confidence came from preparing to back up Stetson Bennett a year ago and playing in the national championship and having a real role in the national championship. I know it was a blowout, but he was in there for a long time, and he really relished in that opportunity. And he said it's only built his confidence. So I really like that for Carson as well. I think they do get started fast, and it helps them kind of set that standard for the season. Another thing I think to think about is what other players does Bobo want to instill confidence in that will be important this season. And, no team has finished the year with all their starters healthy. So you always have to think about that. I think that's a big point of emphasis here in these games as well, is get a guy like Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton ready to play the season and ready to be ready in case something happens to Carson, right? And for Brock, I think it's even more important because he is that second guy. He has been in there longer than Gunnar, so I think he is a sure second. And if God forbid if something happens, he has to have at least enough confidence in him where, hey, I've done it on the field this year, because he hasn't, when the game appearances that he has had not productive. I think he's yet to complete a pass, although he has attempted. He hasn't completed one. So I think that's big in this game as well. I expect that Carson Beck maybe to be in a half, and then Brock take over, maybe even a little bit earlier. I'm not sure what that plan is going to be. I guess it depends on the score, but I doubt. I mean, there's not even a line on this game. There's not even odds makers are not even putting a line on this game. That's how big of a gap it is here. And I think another thing you talk about as far as a first-year starting quarterback and the tools they have around them is very important. And I don't think you could ask for better tools. I mean, at wide receiver, we talked about it so much. You have the guys. You have Arian Smith and, Marcus Rosemy-Jack, St. Lab McConkey is an absolute threat everywhere they put him on the defense. He can play any wide receiver position, and he plays it well. And he's a really good blocker. So is Marcus Rosemy. And these guys, they're really asked a lot from as far as blockers go as well. I think the receiver room is great. Now, Kirby Smart did note this week that he thinks they're thin. I think that makes sense when you think about the injuries, that have really plagued the receiver room in the past. And then I think the offensive line standpoint, it's really good. Georgia's projected to have the number one offensive line. They were the top two the last two seasons. I don't think that changes this year. I mean, your first three are returning as guys who played a lot of games: Tate Ratledge and Cedric Van Pran and Xavier Truss. The two tackles need to be replaced, and Amarius Mims, it's funny. It kind of reminds me of the whole Broderick Jones thing. Broderick goes in the first round of Pittsburgh this past draft, and after only starting one complete season. Amarius is really the same guy when you look at it. Now, he's rotated in, he's had snaps, he's played well at times and taken over that position when we've had injuries for Warren McClendon last year. But now he is that guy at right tackle, and he's already projected by Mel Kiper as a number 25 player on his top 25.
Yeah, I saw that today.
Right?
Yeah, I saw it today.
And so I think you're not going to miss any beats there at right tackle. Now, left tackle, obviously there is a battle there. I think Ernest Green has earned a start. We'll see officially. Kirby Smart does not release depth charts. I think it's so funny when you see Dabo Sweeney and Josh Heupel release depth charts. It's ones I've written about this past week. They did it like Monday. But Kirby's going to hold that to the chest until game day, and when he gives it to the media, it's going to say Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift or Gunnar Stockton. Everything is or, right? Because he's not going to tell you anything. He feel like he has to. I mean, he's a back-to-back national champion too, so he's not going to do anything about that. Running back wise, we'll just go through the offense. Running back wise, I think there is that concern of depth, and I think the injuries and just obviously, I mean, when you have a hamstring problem, okay, right? If as long as it's not torn, and you can still practice and work your way back from it, I think that's nothing to write home about. But when you have Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton missing spring practice, missing some of the fall, right? You question their durability. We know Kendall Milton has had injury problems each of his first 3 seasons in Athens. He's missed games each of his first 3 seasons in Athens. Now he has that talent. My goodness, he has that talent. When he gets in and he's had those breakaway runs, he runs through people. He needs to improve as a pass catcher. I think that's something Bobo, I think, will focus on early in this game as well, is getting these running backs involved in the pass game. Because you take Kenny McIntosh, who was, one of the best receiving running backs in the country last year, and you take him out. I mean, that's a big part of your offense you don't have there unless you can get guys to contribute well enough to really add that, I think, that space in your offense to take defenders out of the box. I think another part of that as well is, Stetson Bennett's legs. They're not going to have that. Ken Carson, and we talked about Aaron with this too. And I know I'm long-winded here, but Aaron was pretty adamant that he thinks Carson has enough mobility to really cause some problems with his feet as well, and at least move the pocket when needed, take off when needed. Something to watch out for. Something I'm very, very keen on. I think I've been this offseason, because you look at it like, what's one thing that Carson Beck doesn't have that Stetson has? Stetson's a better runner. Now he is a lot better runner. This remains to be seen. We haven't seen enough of Carson Beck. I think it's something to keep your mind on when you're talking about offense here. Got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I just think that, and again, I'm a Mike Bobo guy. I stand Mike Bobo. And if you would have asked 19-year-old Arthur Lynch if he liked Coach Bobo, no, I probably wanted to kill him, because we were just polar opposite human beings. We got a South Georgia guy and a Massachusetts guy, but his ability to maximize the talents of his players and get the best out of his players, particularly, and obviously on the offensive side of the ball, is pretty special. And yes, Stetson was an unbelievable runner. Stetson was a gamer. I think Stetson is like almost like a unicorn because of that mindset, that chip on the shoulder. It's like he was destined to do what he did almost. I think Carson is your prototypical passer. He had all the accolades that Aaron Murray had coming out of high school, and the Zach Bettenbergers had, Elite 11, all. So it's like the talent's there, right? I think for him and for the offense as a whole, they need to find their own identity, right? Last year is gone. Everything that happened last year, yeah, national championship, great, right? We won a three-peat though, right? No one talks about like, hey, this was awesome what we did last year or the year before. Fans might brag about it, but everybody inside that building and inside that locker room, they're looking forward. And they realize that everything that happened last year is in the past. So I think what the coaching staff is doing, both on the defensive side of the ball, but really the offensive side of the ball, is what's our identity, right? Is it going to be running? Is it going to be running backs? Is it going to be using the tight ends all over the field? Is it going to be making Ladd McConkey a Blendikoff winner, right? Is Carson Beck going to be the guy, right? And I think there's a number of different ways they can go. But the word that keeps coming back to me, in my mind, is balance. I think Mike Bobo wants to establish a balanced regime on the offensive side of the ball, particularly earlier in the season. Like I said, he wants the guys who have yet to have legitimate playing experience deep into the season to get confident early, to make mistakes early so they can learn from those mistakes, so they can get over their hurt feelings when they get yelled at early in the season and grow, right? And I think that, just from personal experience, right? We were talking about this before we went live, just kind of about like the Friday nerves when you were playing high school football, and that it's such a good feeling, but it is anxiety, right? And I know my first 2 years I played, but I didn't play a lot, and I got to be behind a close friend who at the time was a competitor, but he was an All-American tight end. Orson Charles, awesome guy. And my nerves were limited because I have a role. I'm a short yardage block guy. I run a route here or there, special teams. So like year two, I was confident in those roles. When Orson left and I became the starter, I was nervous as heck. Right? We played Buffalo that first year in 2012, and like I remember watching the film and like how I felt. I was like, I wasn't. It was just like you could tell I was hesitant, right? Even like on a backside cutoff block with a defensive end before running a lead to the other side of the field. And I just think like that's just my experience, right? That's being a tight end. But you got to think about those anxieties and those pressures are even like heightened and more intensified if you're the quarterback. Now, I'm not saying Carson Beck's going to be like an emotional wreck. I'm just saying early on in the season, there's going to be anxieties across the field, right? Across each player, right? And so I think Bobo knows that. He's a former player himself. He's a former starting quarterback at University of Georgia. He understands the responsibility that comes with that position, both on the field and off the field. And so I think he's going to do a very, very good job of preparing Carson Beck to move forward as a starting quarterback. But as a collective unit, I think he sees the different types of areas on the offense that need to gain those confidence earlier in the season, and how some guys like Brock, who will probably get his like 3 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, then be like, go take a seat. We got to get these 3 young pup tight ends some reps because we know we're going to be in 3 tight end sets against Auburn, against Tennessee, against Ole Miss, and yeah, probably against LSU or Alabama in the SEC championship game. So that's how I view it, right? How are we going to balance the offense? How are we going to get experience? The guys who need to get tangible experience in these first couple of games before we hit the road of the SEC schedule.
Yeah, no, I love that. I completely agree. I think balance is something that can be said of Bobo's offenses in the past, no matter how you feel about it. I mean, he does have the Georgia record for most points per game in a season, in that 14 season. I think balance was a big part of that, and I expect more of that. I think especially after seeing how Monken succeeded and the way that the team scored. And just imagine if Georgia didn't have the best defense in the country the last 2 years, and if the offense actually had to put up points when it needed to, like when it not it needed to, but had to.
Yeah, totally.
How much more they would have scored. I think that, I think Bobo's spending a year behind that, learning from Monken as well, and obviously going to enter his own wrinkles in that offense. I think balance shifts. I think we're going to see a lot of shifts. I mean, Monken was so good at that and really creating matchups, especially with Bowers. I mean, that's something you're going to have to do. Of course, everybody's going to key on Bowers. They have been since really the 4th, 5th game of his freshman season.
Freshman year.
He's still done what he's done. And I think shifts are a big part of that. So I do want to see more of that. And I think we will. Let's jump into some defense real quick. Pretty exciting position battles when you think about it. Javon Bullard had that special season last year at Star. And, Christopher Smith, a physical, really smart player. And I think he needs to get credit for that and what he did as safety last year and really the year before that as well. A leader on that defense as well. Now Javon Bullard moves into that strong spot with Malachi Starks at free off a freshman All-American season, which he was incredible, made some mistakes, but most of it was just really good and consistent and then big plays. And I think you having a guy like Malachi back there who's got some confidence in him now, even more than he did last year. He's healthy. Move Javon back there. I think Bullard will be comfortable. And I think we talked about, if you haven't seen it, guys, Bakari Rambo had a really good take on this. We had him on this offseason, and he spent 2 years on Kirby Smart's staff and really knows that defense and knows, as a defensive backs coach and assistant that he was, knows how Kirby likes to run his defensive backfield. And he really spoke on how the strong safety and the star position in this defense are interchangeable almost because of how much they complement each other. He brought up, and this is not verbatim, but, when a strong blitzes, who's covering him? It's a star. A star is going to drop back unless you're blitzing them both. But, kind of that same relationship that the star blitzes, that strong's got to be there to cover him and cover his spot in the field. So I think he'll do fine, and I think his athleticism, the way he hits and being in that defense as long as he has, I think he's going to do fine and strong. But really, that opens up for that star position. And Tyke Smith, former All-American at West Virginia 2020, 2 ACL tears. He's got some confidence in him back, I think, from playing towards the end of the season last year after working back from those injuries and getting some playing time. And now he's spent a whole offseason healthy, which is the first time he's done that in 2 years. So I think he's got that star position, but I think we're going to see a lot of rotation, guys. We're going to see a lot of rotation. We're going to see Jonel Aguero, freshman 5-star. It's got rave reviews from several different coaches and players and his teammates alike. He looks like a linebacker. Me and Arthur were talking about the differences in how guys looked when he was playing and now, with Georgia with their $80 million facilities and their own restaurant and their own dietitians,
Dudes look like they're in their third or fourth year of the NFL, man. It was like back when I was playing, guys were eating just way too much Canes and way too many drinking too many Natty Lights and still hammering Coca-Cola, not Pepsi. And you're just sitting there like just a different breed of like athlete that's walking around. And it kind of leads me to my point there. I was going to go with or talk about a little bit is from the defensive side of the ball. Kirby, unbelievable motivator, unbelievable like CEO of how to run a program. But I mean, the dude's he's one of the best recruiters in college football. And his ability to identify talent, attract the talent on campus, and then develop that talent, it's gotten me to be in a very selfish point of view where it's like, I don't even worry about the defense because it's just like, it's plug and play with these guys, right? Oh. And you can tell by how they play really since, for several years, but like, I feel like since the Kobe Dean was leading that defense, like he set a tempo, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of created that his attitude, not when I say attitude, I mean his passion, his understanding of how the game needed to be played and setting the tempo every single game, which I'm sure was every single day in practice. Mm-hmm. I think that has like reverberated for years after him, right? Yeah, and I think that's the standard that has been created on the Georgia defense. So yeah. We could throw out all the names we want. It's like, I'm sure if we did the rivals.com rankings or whatever it is, these guys are all like 4.9 or 5 or whatever it is. And like, that's great. You still got to get them on campus. They got to stay on campus. They got to be developed. Yeah. And I just think that it's just plug and play, man. It's like, hey, you do your job. You play with like a fierce sense of like, I'm going to get after somebody's ass. Mm-hmm. You got a chance to go play in the NFL for a long time if you do it the Georgia way under Kirby Smart's in their defensive scheme, right? So obviously tons of guys. There'll be a ton of more All-Americans, but like when I think about Georgia defense in this era, it's just like I almost turn like the TV, I flipped. I'm just like, we'll get the ball back and then we're going to do an offense. You know what I mean?
I completely agree. And I find myself doing that too. And it's incredible that it's become that. I still love to hear about the position battles, and because I think I do agree, and I'm thinking that the same way. I think where it gets me is the depth because injuries are so prevalent in this game that we play.
Totally.
So I think that's something to keep in mind, and the experience factor as well. But then, you say that, but then you have guys like Michael Williams last year and Malachi Starks who both had freshman All-American seasons in a defense just loaded with NFL talent.
Loaded, man.
And you talked about it, the recruiting that Kirby does. And I think that getting the right guys is a big thing too, because you hear these guys. Totally. And what I mean by how we can tell they're the right guys is when they talk and the things they say. And even more now in the NIL era, when they get to go on actual shows and talk to people that are not standing in their face with a recorder or a camera and they're up on a podium, because that's where you get absolutely nothing. And shameless plug, Players Lounge, that's where you get that stuff. You got guys actually talking ball and talking their feelings and how they got to that point, what their experience was. And Keely Ringo said yesterday, and I wrote a little bit on this, and he talked about that standard that you just mentioned that was set, and he mentioned it really that sophomore season, so 2021, and that's that was when Kobe had that really good season and won the Butkus. He said that standard he really felt like it was set that year. And so that's all they talk about is the standard. And I think Kirby loves that middle linebacker that is the not only the captain of the defense, but the motivator of the defense. And you look at
Totally.
Roquan Smith, N'Kobe Dean, and now Jamin Dumas Johnson is that guy. I mean, we have countless clips of him last year just getting in guys' faces after making a mistake. And I think he is that guy. I mean, you obviously need that guy in the middle of defense to really communicate between the line and the back end because they are so far apart, make them on the same page as far as what they need, what their goal should be in that play, where they needed to stop here, go for the ball, whatever it may be. Yeah, so the defense, we don't have to spend too much time on it, but I do want to mention another position battle here in cornerback. It looks like, and from what I've heard from Kirby Smart, and he's like, trying to get any intel from him is like putting together a puzzle without one piece. You're not going
I
to
mean,
get.
he did come from Saban's tree, who came from Belichick's tree. It's just like
yeah,
it's like a poker game with those guys,
yeah,
right? I mean,
and it's not great for the media or like guys who cover. So it's always a struggle, but back to back national champions, so I'm not complaining. It looks like that Julian Humphrey, second year player, he's a former 5-star, maybe 4-star, depending on what recruiting service you like. But I think he is going to be that CB2 opposite of Lassiter, sounds like. But I think there's going to be a lot of rotation. So we might see Humphrey trot out there in the first drive, but I fully expect us to see Dalen Everett and Nyland Green also in that spots, and maybe even Nyland Green at star. I think so many young guys are going to be rotating. I think they might get to a point where they find, 2 sure starters, or they already have Lassiter. So 1 sure starter at corner and 1 at star. But, dude, I think it's going to be rotation city throughout the season.
totally,
Really. So
totally.
so don't be nervous if one of these young guys comes in for. I don't think you should be, because if they're on that field, they earned it in Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp's mind, 2 of the best defensive back coach in college football, bar none. So that's really it for the defense. I mean, the defensive line is returning guys. You have Warren Brinson, Tyrone Ingram Dawkins right there in the middle. You got Stackhouse, Zion Logue. These guys are really experienced, and they're really the leaders of the team as well. And Kirby mentioned that this week as well. They put a lot of responsibility on those guys, and they delivered, according to Smart. And then Jalen Walker moved back to linebacker. He can play inside or outside linebacker. I'm excited to see what he can do there. And really, those Swiss Army knife guys are just so fun to watch to me. And that's really it, guys. I mean, the defense, yeah, don't be too worried about it. Okay. Let's get in. So that's kind of our season preview there. Let's get into a little bit of, let's go season predictions here. I like us go 12-0. I think the schedule sets up for it. I fully expect some growing pains. And I think we kind of alluded to that a little bit by mistakes on the offense and the defense as well, of course. And so you might have a game, in that game at Auburn stands out, game at versus Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin trying to, fight for his seat really at Ole Miss, try to make something happen against the back-to-back champions. I think that's something to watch out for. Tennessee, don't know if Tennessee has the depth to do it this year. It could be a close game. You never know, but Georgia has owned Neyland Stadium the past few times they visited. But I do think maybe an SEC championship slip up against a team like LSU or Alabama, who really wants to get back on that stage, could possibly happen. We've seen that happen before, and Georgia comes back and wins the championship. So I like a 12-0, maybe a 12-1 in the SEC championship, and then a playoff berth. And I think Georgia gets it done there, because by that time, these young players that we've mentioned in the scheme that we've mentioned, it's already going to be developed. These guys are going to have confidence in what they're looking at, and then the coaching staff is going to they've all been there before. So I like Georgia in the national championship again. First team to three-peat since Minnesota in the 1930s. That's what I like. I know I sound like a Georgia bias, but it's just they're too good on paper. Absolutely too good. What do you think on that, Artie?
Yeah, no, I think, obviously the talent that we've accumulated that Kirby and his staff has accumulated over the course of the past 5 years is pretty substantial, right? It's an exceptional run that they've got going on. I think they have every opportunity ahead of them to go. I think they'll be back in the playoff, and I think that they'll most likely be in the national championship again. I do think it's going to be. I actually think there's going to end up being 2 Big Ten and 2 SEC teams. I think it's be Georgia and then either LSU, Alabama. I actually think I think LSU is a little bit overhyped personally. Um, and then I actually think it's be Penn State and Michigan again.
Ooh, Penn
So I think
State.
it's
No Ohio State.
yeah,
Penn State. Okay.
yeah. So
All right.
that's my top, playoff prediction thus far. I think Penn
Okay.
State is loaded. But to get back to Georgia, I think this very favorable schedule, like you said. I'm very worried about Auburn, not because it's Auburn. I personally hate Auburn. I've always hated
You
Auburn,
better. You better,
always will
dude.
hate Auburn, right? But you say whatever you want about Hugh Freeze. Like him, love him, indifferent, doesn't matter. The guy can coach football, he can recruit, and he knows how to play. He knows how to get his team motivated for the biggest of games, right? Ole Miss beat Alabama. I think they won twice. One was with like Bo Wallace. You know, that tells you all you need to know. Bo's a great guy, solid quarterback, but it's he took down a Titan in Alabama. So I am concerned about having to play Hugh Freeze every year moving forward. I don't think they're going to have the talent to take down Georgia this year, but I do think it's going to be a close game, right? I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Playing at Auburn is incredibly tough, and it's just we were talking about this offline as well, like the beauty of college football, the rivalries, the tradition. It's like that game, Deep South Soldiers rivalry. It's just such a cool experience, but it really is kind of a coin flip, right? Even when there's some disparity going on between the talent differences, right? So that game worries me a little bit. I think ultimately they'll win. I think they're going to smoke Ole Miss personally, and then I think Tennessee and Auburn are the two that give me the most pause.
Mhm.
Again, we have a very, really since Mark Rick, we've had a very strong record against Tennessee. Kirby's just taken it to another level. Um, but I do think Milton could be very good. I think Milton under Heupel's tutelage could be a very good player for them.
Yeah.
Um, each year, I think Heupel is only going to improve that program. Um, I lived in Knoxville for a year, kind of saw him. Uh, I think it was his first year, Heupel's first year, and kind of saw how he was trying to mold that program. So I do think they're going to be a formidable opponent moving forward. But to your point, I don't think the depth is there, right?
Yeah. They
Um,
have some
I
questions in the
just,
secondary. Guys
yeah, totally.
who have been there for a while, but they haven't had a lot of game experience. Injuries hurt them last year there. Front seven, I think, is something to watch out for them. It's really the defense because you have that offense. And we talked about this at length last year on the show before that Tennessee game because they were going into it as the number one CFP team in the country.
Oh yeah,
And it was clear from really the first drive that the offensive line, defensive line disparity there for Georgia, and they're not
it's
going to be
different class,
lacking that. Yeah, and of course,
different class of player.
yeah, and it's really hard to say it any other way. I think that mistakes are what kills Georgia, obviously, at times when Georgia's down. It's really any football team, especially against guys like Missouri last year. How did that happen when you look back at it? It's a Missouri defense that played their heart out, and it's mistakes by Georgia. So can that happen again? And you put up some good points about Auburn and Tennessee there. I think going on the road in the SEC, baby, is still hard. It's still hard. And
No
Kirby will
doubt.
preach that. He'll preach that all day. So something you look at. Yeah, CFP, and we'll get UT Martin score prediction here, and we'll get out. But CFP for me, I don't believe in Penn State. They got to
All
prove
right.
it to me.
Okay.
Offensively, I just don't see them really putting enough points. You meet a defense, you meet a really, really overly talented defense like Ohio State, Michigan. How are you gonna play? I think both of those teams in the Big Ten really match up well, offensive defensive line with Penn State. So I think it'll be a shootout at that point. Who makes the least
All
mistake?
right.
I just don't think. I think offensively, Michigan and Ohio State are better.
Okay.
I do like Ohio State this year a lot, honestly. If they can stay healthy, a quarterback, obviously has to prove some stuff, but McCord, I believe he was Marvin Harrison's junior's quarterback in high school. So I think that
Oh, really?
relationship is good. Yeah. Now,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. I mean,
Now
he was. I
something.
looked him up. I actually looked him up today because I was like McCord. It just didn't really ring a bell. And
Yeah,
Ohio State does a good,
they have the
like
receivers now.
Georgia.
They have
They
the
got,
offensive line.
yeah, they got some serious talent on that
Yeah,
team. I
yeah.
mean,
They recruit with the
the
best of them.
deep, yeah, yeah. So in that McCord was like 4 star, 5 star kid. I'm sure he'll be good. I'm sure he'll probably be great.
Yeah,
But there's something there's a tide that has turned a little bit in that Michigan. I don't know what it is. I
it
don't know what it
has. It
is.
has. I'm with you there. But let's think about it from a baseball perspective here, just to throw
Yeah,
some
yeah.
gum in the
Go
loop
roll
here.
with it.
Uh, Ohio State's due up. They're due up. Okay, 2 straight losses to Michigan. They're due up. And here's the thing: I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan makes this playoff again. Am I going to think they're going to win a playoff game with how they've performed in the playoff games that they've had? Remember that TCU game, who was clearly
Yeah,
from a really player to player standpoint, not even close to what
it
Michigan should have
wasn't
been.
even close.
Jim
No.
Harbaugh in that playoff, man, it keeps getting him until he shows me something other than beating Ohio State in a rivalry game. I don't believe that they can do it. And I know everybody loved that Michigan pick. I think Ohio State's going to make that. And unless Michigan kills every single team, including Penn State, before they face Ohio State, maybe they get a loss there. They're not going to get in the playoffs. I think it'll be Ohio State. I do like Georgia, and I think Alabama or LSU is going to get in there too. I think one of
Yeah,
those teams is going to undefeated. They're going to lose to Georgia, maybe in the SEC championship or vice versa. Georgia's going to be in either way. So I like Ohio State, LSU, or Alabama, Georgia, and I think there's going to be a team maybe from the Big 12 or Pac 12 there that jumps in. ACC, I like Clemson. I do like Clemson. They got an offensive coordinator in Garrett Riley.
yeah,
Comes from that
yep.
Riley tree, right? He has a really talented guy in Cade Klubnik, who at times shined last season, but that offensive system did not really do it for me as far as getting the best out of him. I think Garrett Riley gets the best out of him. They have a lot of good players on defense. That's 75% of production returning on defense. 2 stud linebackers, too. Defensive linemen as well to boot. Can their offense really get it together maybe late in the season? I think Clemson's somebody to watch out for in the ACC. And then Oregon, I'm not a believer in Washington. I don't want to hear about Washington. I saw somebody put them in the CFP. The defense, baby. Defense. That's how you're going to win. Okay. You got to have defense. It's still a defensive league or defensive football. When it comes to playoff and championship football in my mind. And then USC, I just don't think they had the defense, man.
Yeah,
I didn't like them last week at San Jose State, man. Oh,
I think they're a couple years away. Depth's an issue. When they were humming, I mean, and again,
yeah.
this is when they
Lincoln
were
Riley can't
humming.
play defense. It's just
But he's such a good offensive coach that he
yeah,
just needs like a solid defense. He does not need Georgia defense,
yeah.
but they just don't have the depth. And if you go back to the Pete Carroll years, right? I mean, Pete Carroll's a defensive coach, and I mean, look, I got my Reggie Bush USC Stitch jersey that I got on East Bay Magazine. For all you old heads, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Still hanging up in my closet. I was a USC guy, and I watched that defense, and they were stacked. I mean, hitters, man, hitters. Right? You talk about Ray Maluga, Cushing, Matthews, Sean Cody in the defensive line.
Was
They had
Palomalu? That Palomalu too?
Palomalu was like beginning of Carroll era, but that like '04 to '06 range
Mm-hmm.
was like Taylor Mays with the safety. I mean, they had dudes everywhere. And I think Darnell Bing was another safety. He may have been Texas, but I'm pretty sure. Long story short, they had like a strong, strong defense. And then their offense was obviously what everyone, the Heisman winners, this and that. But to your point, I think you have to have a serviceable defense at minimum, in
Mm-hmm.
particularly in this era of college football. So I'm not super sold on USC. I like Washington. I pulled for Washington because I got like a loose family connection there, but they're not going to. I'm with you on that. I think Penix is a really good player.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Oregon, I think Oregon is aligned from like an NIL standpoint, a donor standpoint, and I think that coach out there,
Yeah.
who is our defensive coordinator, his name's
Dan
slipping me right
Lanning.
now.
Love Dan Lanning.
Lanning, I think that dude can recruit. So I think they're poised to do well, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're quite there yet.
Bo
I
Nix is
will
going to have a Heisman season if they're going to make the playoffs.
totally completely agree. And I really like him as a player. He's a tough kid. I'm glad he's kind of caught this second wind in his career because that was a dumpster fire that he was a part of at Auburn.
Yeah.
I think I kind of got a sleeper pick
Uh-oh.
in the West. I don't think they're gonna make the playoff, but I think they're gonna. And I'm not really a huge fan of Jimbo Fisher. I don't dislike him or like him, but Bobby Petrino, who I know Georgia fans and the Georgia faithful and the good people of Georgia who I know and love aren't a huge fan of the Petrino movement because of what he did to the Falcons. But that dude can coach football, and he can coach offensive football. Unlike Jimbo Fisher, Petrino has been adaptability and his ability to evolve with the time, offensive times throughout his career. And this kind of, he's somewhat of an innovator, right? I think he's going to be a very good fit for them. I don't know by Petrino. Everything that I've heard about him from people in the coaching profession or who have played for him is like he's a hard ass, and only way he took that job is if he has complete control of that offense. And there's a lot of talent at Texas A&M. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they, probably not struggle early on, but like find their way a little bit, get confidence, like we're talking about for Wegman. I think that's his last name. But it wouldn't surprise me if they knock off some guys, some teams in the West. And guys transferred away. But when you recruit at a high level and you can recruit depth, which Jimbo can and has done, if Petrino, as long as he's not on a motorcycle or doing anything that might jeopardize, I think he's a hell of a coach, man.
Yeah.
And that's a team in the West that could trip up a team like LSU, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Nick Saban is going to be sleeping on Jimbo Fisher ever again because of the SEC media days and the little snipes they took at each other. But yeah, I'll be very interested to see how Texas A&M does with this new offensive coordinator. Not too dissimilar to what you were talking about with Lincoln Riley's brother over at Clemson. I think both of those hires are going to be pretty transformational in the short term for those two programs.
Yeah, I like it. Thanks, Artie. Good stuff here, guys. We'll be back live, UJ Football Live on Thursdays each week throughout the season. Make sure to subscribe if you can, Pulse Sports Network, and also UJ Football Live on Twitter, Instagram. We'll have the links out for you guys. We'll pull straight to YouTube so you can click in and follow along with us next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And we'll talk about what happens Saturday for the Georgia Bulldogs, as well as with the college football weekend, really week one, what it turns out. So we appreciate you guys watching, and we'll be back next week. Go Dogs, Artie.
Go Dogs. See you boys next week.